from embryology, because that gives us sort of an understanding of what is the ontogeny of whatever the systems we are trying to study at this point of point. So the gut, as we know, is a single tube. It is suspended in the embryo by both the dorsal mesentery and a ventral mesentery, and it is supplied by three anterior branches of aorta at different levels. So depending upon its blood supply, it has been divided into three parts. So the foregut is supplied by the celiac artery, the midgut is supplied by the superior mesentery, and the hindgut by the inferior mesentery. Now, this is important because this particular blood supply persists throughout the development, and in the adult system also, if we see, so the foregut from the buccopharyngeal fascia right down to the papilla of Vater, the foregut is supplied primarily by the celiac trunk. From the third part of the duodenum and down to the two-third part of the transverse column, that is supplied by the superior mesentery, and the distal one-third right down to the proximal half of the anal canal is supplied by the inferior mesentery. The distal half of anal canal is developed from the ectoderm, therefore the blood supply is different. So this blood supply, therefore, for rectum per se, inferior mesenteric is of prime importance. So look at the inferior mesenteric, from where it arises and how it is spread. So it arises as a ventral branch right from the aorta at the level of L3, L4, goes down into the pelvic cavity and divides, gives off three branches. So earlier it gives off a left colic, then it is a sigmoid and a superior rectum. Now this bifurcation we have to remember, look at the level. So this is occurring almost at the level of the sacral promontory per se, and this is much lower than the bifurcation of the common iliac into the external and the internal iliac. So the external iliac is not of much consequence in when we are trying to understand the blood supply of the rectum and anal canal, but the internal iliac is important and is responsible for sharing the load of the blood supply along with the inferior mesentery. So as we all know that the lymphatics follow the vessels. So if we can trace the vessels, we very well know where the lymphatics are going and where will be the chances of a spread of the disease. So if we try to divide it, so we have the inferior mesenteric coming high up, then we go down and it divides into the superior rectal and the sigmoid. And this is the iliacs, so the internal iliac and the external iliac, as we said, is of no consequence. So depending upon this blood supply, the distribution of the lymphatics has been divided into three parts. So the lower zone, which is supplied in part by the inferior rectum arising from the from the internal iliac, there the drainage pattern is much more lateral and upwards. In the mid rectum, it is more predominantly lateral. So by lateral, which means the pelvic side walls would be receiving the bulk of the lymphatic drainage, and in the upper rectal part it will be predominantly upward. So that means the lymphatic pattern or the lymphatic drainage would be towards the superior rectal and thereon to the inferior mesenteric. So we need to remember this because our target sort of the elective target volume which we want to treat will depend upon the location of the tumor also. So if we understand this part, then it is very easy to understand that what will be considered as the regional lymph nodes and what will be the non-regional lymph nodes. So if we all understand, so the inferior mesentery and the entire drainage pattern of the internal iliac, including the obturator nodes, are regional lymph nodes for rectum. As with the same corollary, the common iliac, the external iliac, inguinal and femoral would be non-regional, with the exception that if there is a anorectal tumor, that means the tumor has gone into the anal canal, then inguinal can be considered as regional, but those are exceptions. The second important thing that we understand from the embryology is the mesentery that we discussed. And what is the purpose of the mesentery? Basically, it forms a pathway which provides a path for carrying out the blood vessels right down to the gut. So as the gut is developing, it is pulling the blood supply along with it. And this blood supply then travels between the layers of the mesentery to reach the gut. So like the vascular supply persists, similarly the mesenteric, the notion of the mesentery persists in adult life. So the ventral mesentery more or less gets absorbed. The dorsal mesentery of the foregut persists in adults in the form of the lesser omentum. The midgut mesentery is the mesentery that we all are aware of, while the hindgut mesentery is almost sort of absorbed, except that it can be sort of understood as the remnant, which can be seen as the mesorectum. So this is important. That is why the mesorectum is such an important entity when we are trying to study the rectum and its drainage patterns. So we, how to understand the mesorectum, because as such there is no anatomical entity which was mentioned in textbooks. This is more of a surgical and a radiological entity which has come into being and is now of considerable relevance. So the mesorectum is derived from the inferior mesentery. So it is a part of that. It forms the visceral mesentery of the rectum, and between the rectum and the mesenteric part, there is a lot of fat deposition, and it is surrounded by a visceral fascia of the rectum, which is called as the mesorectal fascia. And adjacent to that, beyond that, would be a parietal fascia, which will be lining the pelvic cavity. And between these two fascia would be a pretty bloodless or a avascular plane, which forms the so-called holy plane, which the surgeons want to reach and do all the surgery between those planes. So that is why to understand mesorectal fascia is important. So if we look at the sectioning part of it, so the rectum, it will be surrounded by fat, which will be the mesorectal fat. There will be a visceral fascia. So this is the mesorectal fascia. Beyond that would be a parietal fascia, which is the presacral fascia. Now this is visible when we are doing the surgery. On MR, it is visible. On CT, it is difficult to visualize, but a good resolution CT, you might be able to see the mesorectal fascia. So here, like we can very well see the mesorectal fascia, which is well defined by these yellow markers. So like we discussed the mesorectum, then there is the possibility that we have to understand what happens to the facial linings when we are trying to do this. So like we said that the sacrum or the pelvic cavity is lined by a fascia. So this forms the presacral fascia. Ahead of that would be the visceral fascia of the rectum. So that would be the rectal fascia. And this is the plane that we are talking about resection. Anteriorly, it is covered by the rectal fascia, but on top of that is the reflection of the peritoneum. Now, the peritoneum reflection is not in the entire extent of the rectum, and we will be sort of discussing it further on. While lower down, beyond the peritoneal reflection, lower down is the so-called Denon-Villiers fascia, which separates it from the prostate and the rectum. So on MR, it is well defined. So in blue, we can see the mesorectal fascia, and in red, the presacral fascia. So the mesorectal fascia, if you want to see the entire extent, just look at the green outline, which we are able to see. So behind it, this would be the presacral area. And this is the boundaries of the mesorectal fascia in green. So very clearly visible on an MR. Easy to see, and it sort of ends where the pelvic diaphragm sort of ends. So the mesorectal ends, mesorectal fat where we can't visualize, that would be the end of the mesorectal fascia. So as I said that this is the avascular plane. So the surgeons basically are wanting to reach this plane and remove whatever they can without breaching this fascia at all. So this is what is called as a good quality total mesorectal excision. So it's only that the extent of surgery will differ, but what they are trying to remove continues to remain the same. So this envelope is what they want to remove at all times. Depending upon the extent, it could either be an anterior resection, it could be a APR when they will try to go all the way down. It could be intermesenteric, sphincteric excision, or it could be a trans-sphincteric when they are not trying to save the sphincter at all, and they will remove the lower part of the sphincter completely. So this is what we always remember, that this is the target that has to be removed. So like we said, that we understand the peritoneum and what is the relationship, because it has an impact upon the sort of the invasion patterns and the drainage patterns of the rectum. So depending upon on which level in this diagram that we see, where we see it, there will be a different sort of relationship with the peritoneum, because the peritoneum only is lying antero and lateral to it, and that too only in the upper part of the rectum. So if we are looking at the high above, what we see is that a peritoneal cavity posteriorly is deficient, anteriorly is present, laterally can be seen to a certain extent. If we go lower down, then this lateral reflection is also sort of regresses, and it's only in this anterior aspect that it can be seen. While if we go beyond the peritoneal reflection, then it is only the mesorectal fascia which can be seen, and there is no peritoneum. So this is important, and on an MR, it can be visualized as such. So this will be the lower part, and there is totally no evidence of any peritoneum. It's entirely covered by the mesorectal fascia. In mid pelvis, we can see part of the peritoneal reflection as this thin line, where if you can appreciate this very thin line here in part which lies anteriorly, and a little more higher up, we can see it laterally as well as anteriorly. Now this is very well defined, and it's very well seen over here. So this is what can be visualized depending upon which level we are talking about. And this has implications which we'll discuss subsequently. Another important part that we have to understand about is the pelvic diaphragm, because as such, this forms the boundary between the rectum and the anal canal. So we all talk about the levator ani, but we have to understand that levator ani is not a single muscle. It's basically composed of three paired muscles, both left and right, who join together to form a funnel-like structure, and that through which the rectum passes, and then beyond the diaphragm, whatever continues downwards is the anal canal. So if we look at the muscles, so in blue, which you can see is basically the iliococcygeus. Now this is a paired muscle. Then there will be a pubococcygeus, and then there is the puborectalis. Now all these three together, they form a sling anteriorly, which separates the rectum from the anal canal. Posteriorly, the separation, it is constituted by the ischiococcygous muscle. So all they insert into the external anal sphincter, and this is an important boundary for demarcation, because on per rectal examination, we can only palpate the puborectalis sort of a sling, and which forms a demarcation as to from where we start the rectum measurement, because the dentate line is not palpable per rectally. So the surgeons always sort of take their measurements from the position of the puborectalis sling. So if we look at the where we can see visualize it on an MR, then if you can look at the images. So as we go down, this is what we were talking about. So this would be the major muscle, which is the iliococcygeus. More further down, we would be seeing the pubococcygeus and the puborectalis. So both of them, then they join together and they insert into the external anal sphincter. So this is important because this is an important landmark. So remember how to identify this. Beyond this is the ischiorectal fat. Now this is not the rectal fat any longer. This is the ischiorectal fat, and it's only above this, within this sling, within this sort of a diaphragm, what we see is the mesorectal fat. So relationship, we all are aware what we were talking about. So anteriorly, yes, there will be peritoneum, and depending upon whether it is a male or female, anteriorly would either be the prostate, seminal vesicles, bladder, or in females, it would be the uterus, vagina. So if we come to the staging now, so now once we understand the orientation, we have to understand that the location of the disease also has an impact in staging, not only the depth of invasion. So if we just looking at the depth, that is easy. That's more or less similar with what we have to stage for colon cancers. So stage 1 is primarily to the mucosa. The stage 2 is till the T2 is, sorry, not stage 2. T2 is till the when it is into the submucosa, and T3 will be when it has crossed the muscularis into the mesorectal fat. So depending upon what is the depth of the invasion, there is this is how it is staged. Now the T3 is further divided into what is the extent of invasion into the mesorectal fat. So either it could be less than 1 millimeter, or it could be less than 5 millimeter, then 6 to 15 or 15 millimeter and beyond. Depending upon that, it has been divided into A, B, C and D categories. So this has a prognostic influence, because as we have understood that this particular thing, the lining, this is where we want to do the surgery. So depending upon what will be the depth of invasion, whether we will get a clear plane or not, that will be determined by the depth of invasion into the mesorectal fat. If it is a T4 disease, that means it has crossed either the mesorectal fascia has been breached, and it has either entered into the organs wherein it will be T4B, or if it is lying higher up, then it will breach. So the same tumor, if it breaches the peritoneum, then it will be T4A. So the difference is only that which level it is going to penetrate. So if it is organs, B, peritoneum, A. So this is what we were talking about basically, that what will be the distance from the most distal depth of invasion till the mesorectal fascia. So this forms what is known as the CRM, the circumferential resection margin. And depending upon this distance, it has been variously defined as either positive, it is within 1 millimeter, or it is threatened, that is within 1 to 2 millimeters, or it is completely clear, that means the distance has to be more than 2 millimeters. So if we, again, the surgical implications, that is why it is. And it is not only the tumor, not only this distance from the primary tumor that we need to measure, it's also the distance will be taken from either the most distal aspect. So either it could be in the form of the perirectal nodes, or it could be the tumor deposits also. So whichever is nearest to this mesorectal fascia, we take the distance from there. So end staging we have already discussed, and that will depend upon only the number of nodes which are present. So either it will be 1, 2, 3, or more than 3, which can be divided into N1 or N2 categories. Now the nodes in mesorectal fat or in rectum per se, the problem is that there's a lot of inflammation involved, and there are a lot of nodes in rectum. So how to define which node would be positive and take it and to try to target it will depend upon not only the size criteria, which is there possible in all over the anatomy that we have read, but it is also what is the character of the node. So size criteria alone is not enough, because nodes even smaller than 5 millimeter have turned out to be positive pathologically. So based upon this, they have the radiology, they gave the criteria that you have to take the character as well as the diameter. So if the short axis diameter is more than 9 millimeter, definitely suspicious. But anything less than that, we need to sort of add on the characteristics to it. So either irregular borders, that is indistinct borders, the heterogeneous nature of the node, or rather from an elongated shape if it becomes rounded. So all these three would be taken as malignant. And depending if it is less than 5, we will need all three to be there. If it is 5 to 9, any two of these three features need to be there before we label it as a malignant node. Now this was about the mesorectal nodes, but what is important is that we need to separately take care of the extra mesorectal nodes. That means the nodes which are lying in the pelvic side wall regions and not within the mesorectum, because the surgeon intends to only operate and remove the through the mesorectal excision. So these nodes, if not specifically the surgeon is not targeting, then we are leaving behind gross disease. So before we even start delineating, it has to be discussed in a multidisciplinary team as to how to handle these nodes. So whether they would be dissected or whether they need to be irradiated or both. So that is a clinical decision which needs to be taken upfront. So coming to the delineation, the first and foremost thing before we start the delineation, the intent is that we should be able to target all the tumor and its suspicious drainage areas electively so as to achieve a good local control. So the best way to understand that part is try to understand how the recurrence pattern is happening. Now, before the era of TME, the recurrences, local recurrences were very high to the tune of 30 to 40%. But with once the TME started, because they realized that most of the lymphovascular supply is consolidated within the mesorectal fat. So if we can effectively remove it, these same recurrences, they dropped from 30 to 40% to less than 10%. Now that is a very good achievement. But despite that, they further tried to analyze the recurrence patterns. And what we have come to see is that most of these recurrences, they tend to occur in the perirectal region. So perirectal means that in the lower pelvis rather than in the upper pelvis. So this study in 2008 by Yu et al, they tried to analyze where was the site of the recurrences. And what they found that 65% of the recurrences were infield. That means locally, what they had already irradiated. And most of them, on top of that, of the 65%, around 56% were in the lower pelvis. Now, this was a pattern which was again sort of reported by another study by Choi et al, where they sort of also mapped the vessels and they tried to locate what is the location of the recurrences. And once they found that the major vessels were internal iliac, the external iliac, and they found that the majority of the recurrences occurred near these vessels only, to within 7 to 10 millimeters of these vessels. So this is what helped to decide that it is maybe of, even if they are occurring in the lower pelvis, they are occurring near the vessels. So if with the use of IMRT, if we can just target these areas, then we have the chance of decreasing the normal tissues irradiation while without compromising on the local recurrences aspect of it at all. So this is the premise based upon which there are a lot of guidelines, and they have been around for more than 15 years now. So the first guideline which came out, that was in 2006. Now this was an evolving sort of, there is a learning curve to the entire IMRT spectrum. So initially there will be some guidelines which will be targeted to how to delineate the target, how to delineate the CTV. Then there will be upon how to delineate the elective nodal stations. And apart from that, not only that, we cannot of course forget the normal tissues when we are doing IMRT. So the normal tissues also need to have a well-defined criteria about, and there has to be a consensus as to what we delineate at, from which level we need to start delineating. So any effort to understand this delineation requires that we need to study all these guidelines together. So there are around 6 major papers which are there, which I have given the references. Please go back and try to read them. And we will be just trying to go through them relatively fast, just to give you a general idea. Now there are multiple guidelines. So some of them for the target lesions, if we say for the CTV primary, so they were either directed to the rectum or to the anorectum together or to the anal canal alone. So this is a combination. And in the end, the most recent guideline, the Valentini, has tried to consolidate all this information and come up with these guidelines. So this is Valentini et al. Is what is we would be discussing finally. Now, for the nodal stations, first of all, we start. So like we know that the lymph vessels follow the vessels. So best is track your arteries, veins, and then expand them, give an adequate margin. And more or less, we have covered the lymphatic vessels very well. So in general, there is a 7 mm margin around the common iliac, external iliac, internal iliac. And the same needs to be then sort of, because the obturator per se is a very small artery. So we try to cover this area, and it will lie between the external iliac anteriorly and the internal iliac posteriorly. So any gap between these two is taken as the obturator region, and we need to join both these areas together. And apart from that, there is a presacral region also, which will be catering to the lateral and the medial sacral drainage patterns. And here we want to give around 1 centimeter margin ventral to the surface of the sacrum. So this is for the nodal patterns. If we try to understand how this entire thing sort of envelops the rectum, then the best way is a diagrammatic. And here is where I was remembering Dr. Kanu. So if we consider that this is rectum along with its mesorectal sheath, then all along it, there will be on both sides of the pelvic side wall, there will be the iliac, the internal iliac regions. Behind it would be the presacral region. Anterior to the internal iliacs will come the external iliacs on both sides, and anterior beyond where the external iliac leaves the pelvic cavity would be the inguinal regions. Now these are the basic lymph node regions or the subsites that are always the target in all these guidelines. They might vary in definition, they might vary a bit between the boundaries, but more or less consistently they are talking about treating this particular area. So this is easy to remember if we just remember that this is what we are trying to treat. So if we look at the target volumes, now we said what is the difference. So if we look at the major guidelines which are available, so right from Royals et al., who first started in 2006, they talk about the mesorectal along with an ITV, the presacral region. There will be a lateral pelvic region, that is a lateral lymph nodes, which they have sort of considered the internal iliac and obturators together. Then ahead of that, the external iliac region, and further on the inguinal and the istiorectal fossa or the inferior pelvic site, because they were sort of also catering to part of the anal canal when the rectum sort of invades into the anal canal also. Now Myerson and Astral was the second one, and they use these particular guidelines, but instead of trying to define the subsites, they defined it in terms of what should be our target. So depending upon the priority regions to be included, and what they ended up giving us was the concept of a CTV A, B, and C, which is very relevant even today. So what then thereafter there was the Australasian guidelines. So these are the most easy to understand if you want to start understanding it. Then the mesorectum, they continue. The presacral is there. The lateral, they defined into two different parts, so that internal iliac and obturator were defined separately. Then external iliac, inguinal, and the istiorectal fossa. Now Valenti and et al. Have tried and defined all these guidelines, and they also have sort of decided that which needs to be treated. They've also given a recommendation on the risk category. So if we understand that the CTVA primarily is what is we need to treat in most cases, and if we try to understand it in that concept, then these particular subsites to be included, the top three, that is the mesorectal, presacral, and the lateral, which is primarily the internal iliac and obturator, they need to be included in all cases. For CTV, B is an elective and C would also be an elective. So that is the external iliac, inguinal, and the istiorectal fossa. So this is easy to summarize it. So if we are just going to run through the guidelines just to tell you the pictographically how it sort of happens. So if you can just follow, so the green one which you can see over here is the mesorectal one, and the blue is the presacral. So as we go down, they have divided it into so this will be the iliac region, the presacral, and the mesorectal. So just continue downwards, and this is the area that we all want to treat. This is for the Royals. Coming to the second guideline, when we were talking about CTV A, B, and C, very easy to understand. So CTV A, like we said, similarly, the perirectal, presacral, internal iliac, they have to be treated, and elective is either your external iliac or inguinal. If you look at this, then more or less, they also said the same thing. So if we say that this was what they were trying to do it within the CTV A in brown, CTV B was in blue, which is the external iliac region, and the CTV C was the inguinal, which will appear in red. I hope you can see these things, or I'm not sure if should I go more slowly if you can't.
Yeah, it is visible. Dr. Nirita, it is clearly visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Thank you. So, like I said, that the Australasian guidelines are very easy to understand. If somebody really wants to understand, it's very easy. So, what they said is they started off with a basic CT scan. They defined the volumes, and then they gave a consolidated CTV as to what to draw. So, this will be the external iliac. In between the green is the presacral, and lateral there will be the internal iliac region. Red is the mesorectal area. So just follow it like this, depending upon the level, and more or less we end up getting the same volumes, except that in contrast to Royals, they introduced a 1 centimeter ITV for motion, taking in account the motion of the bladder anteriorly because of the mesorectal, it moves. So this is what it is. So finally, if we want to see that there are so many atlases available, why do we need a new one? So basically atlases will help us if we can consolidate it, all this information, and come to a uniform consensus, then it is easy to compare your results, compare your outcomes, draw consistently, and then it is have derived useful information. So the entire idea of why Valentini came up with this thing was to get away with the discrepancies and try and consolidate all the common features that we were trying to do. So very same subsites, they have also stated, and they have defined the boundaries, taken into account whatever the previous guidelines have given us boundaries. So the presacral, mesorectal, lateral, external iliac, inguinal, istiorectal fossa, and the sphincter complex. So these are the very same guidelines. So one by one now we are going to just go through them, that how to delineate it. So the mesorectal, it is the basically the envelope which we want to treat. So this is of high priority target for us, and we need to define where we want to start. So they have defined that the cranial limit would be where the inferior mesenteric breaks into superior rectal and sigmoid. So this we discussed previously. So this will be lower down where the common iliac bifurcation occurs. So this will be at a lower level. And from there we start, we give a 7 millimeter anterior margin to the superior rectal vessels, and go all the way down, and go as soon as the anterior organs like the bladder, seminal vesicles, uterus, or vagina come, that will form the anterior boundary. Posterior boundary would be dependent upon the sacrum, and this they have incorporated the presacral area wherever the mesorectum sort of starts. So presacral as such is not delineated in entirety. It's just part of where the mesorectum, I mean, where the above the level of the mesorectum. So laterally, it will be bounded by the pelvic side walls vessels. So that means the lateral subsite which they have created. And inferiorly, it will end where the pelvic diaphragm inserts into the internal ileum stricta. So roughly that boundary coincides with a plane if we drive from the coccyx to the inferior border of the pubic symphysis. Beyond that is the anal canal. The important thing to understand is, like we said, that there we need an ITV because the mesorectum moves. So depending upon on which day you have decided to take a scan, so from your planning scan, it can move anteriorly to around 1 to 1.5 centimeters also, and both laterally as well as craniocaudally also. So adequate margins are required, or else you need IGRT if you want to treat it, and so that we don't miss the target with IMRT when we are doing this. So when we are drawing it, just to, once we have seen the boundaries, so I'll just run through. This would be the inferior mesenteric, just trace it down, and this more or less coincides at the level of the rectosigmoid. We go down, and very easy to remember how to do it, just at an anterior margin of 1 centimeter at the level of the bladder and seminal vesicles prostate, and we are good to go. Coming to the presacral, that's the second subsite. Now this was defined as lying anterior to the sacrum. It has been divided into two parts. So there is a abdominal part which is lying above the promontory, and a pelvic part which is beyond the promontory going till the level of the mesorectum. So this is how they have divided it, and it will cover the entire anterior surface of the sacrum by a 1 centimeter margin to it. So very easy to understand. Now the thing is that important to differentiate is that we don't need to go into any of the foramina, sacral foramina, and only if their tumor is adherent to the sacrum do we need to go inside them. Otherwise we can very well just stay on the ventral surface of the sacrum hollow itself. So this is what we meant to say, that this is how it should have been drawn. But since the sort of it more or less lies within the mesorectum, it is not drawn separately from the level where the mesorectum starts. Rather, if we want to do it, then it is from beyond the aortic bifurcation down up till this level. So this is what is the area of the mesorectum that needs to be drawn depending upon whether it is included in your target region or not. So the lateral lymph nodes, very well easy to understand. These are the two prominent arteries there and the vessels that we need to follow on either side. So internal iliac and external iliac. External iliac is not to be sort of considered a mandatory target in rectum, but internal iliac for sure. So we start drawing at that level. So focus on the red contours basically. So that is your internal iliac area, and we keep on going down till we reach up till the, so we are not crossing outside the pelvic cavity. So the anterior border is basically governed by where you are seeing the either the obturator internus muscle. Also, this will be the same plane where the ureters enter the bladder. So this plane is easy to see. Otherwise, if we just keep ourselves confined to the anterior border of the obturator internus, that forms the anterior border of the internal iliac vessels, or it has to sort of coincide with the posterior border of the external iliac vessels also. Behind, it will go all the way back up till the SI joint or the sacrum, and it will bound the mesorectum in between. So the medial border will be the mesorectum, lateral would be the pelvic side walls. And we'll go down as far as there is space visible between the obturator internus and the levator ani. So once the levator ani inserts into the obturator internus muscle, that is the level where we stop drawing the internal iliac region. Now here they have included the obturator within the internal iliac. This is in certain cases if we require, otherwise we can just limit ourselves to this area and not go all the way anteriorly up to there. So if we just follow, so the common iliacs have sort of the common iliacs have arisen and now they have bifurcated. So the moment they bifurcate, we start drawing our region which we want to treat and go all the way down and continue down to till the level of the where the pelvic diaphragm sort of inserts into the obturator internus vessel over here. So the another important thing which we have to understand, because we are starting at the level where the common iliacs have bifurcated. Now that was a level which was higher up than where the inferior mesenteric was bifurcating. So in cases which are advanced, in those cases we have to go right up till the common iliac bifurcation. Otherwise we can bring down the cranial boundary to the level of the mesorectum where it is starting in areas where there is node negative and it is an early disease. So by that we end up gaining around 4 centimeter of the tissue and decreasing the irradiation to the small bowel, which will invariably be a target in this area. So that is to remember. So the middle, this is what we have already talked about. Now if we come to where we sort of end and where the inguinal or the external iliacs will start. So this is what we have talked about. The obturator, very already I said that not to be included in all cases. So to be included only in advanced cases when the tumor has already invaded into the anterior structure. So it's a T4 disease, or the internal iliac lymph nodes are positive, or there are multiple mesorectal lymph nodes. That means it is an advanced nodal stage and the propensity to spread is higher. So the first echelon for that particular thing will become the internal iliac, and therefore it is better to include the obturator in such cases to get adequate local controls. So external iliac, like we said, that not important, but we need to delineate it. So very easy, just follow the vessels, give a 7 millimeter margin, and anterolaterally actually tends to have the anterior group of lymph nodes of the external iliac. So anteriorly, we need to give an increased margin. So it's around a 15 millimeter margins from the edge of the vessel that we have to cover the entire area which lymphatics might be over here. Now we go all the way down. The conventional boundary which we want to say is that the top of the acetabulum. Beyond that, we consider external iliac to be continue forwards as the femoral artery. So then it will convert into the inguinal group of lymph nodes. So it will continue down up till there till we reach the inguinal. Now the external iliacs, we have already said that they are part of our elective coverage area. So only in advanced cases when the internal iliacs are already involved or the anterior structures have been invaded, that is the time when we are trying to include the external iliac regions. And of course, if it is lower third of vagina has been invaded or the anal canal has been invaded, and invariably we need to include the inguinal canal, inguinal lymph nodes also, then there is no point in excluding the external iliac in such cases, because if you're treating inguinal, then it treat the external iliac also because the pathway continues the same. So in green is the external iliacs which are visible over here, and they will go all the way down up till the acetabulum roof, and then they will continue further downwards as the inguinal group of lymph nodes. Inguinal nodes, like we said, that it's a continuation of the external iliac artery which continues beyond the inguinal ligament and forms the femoral artery. So the cranial is wherever you stop drawing the external iliac, start as the inguinal thereafter. And the caudal limit is where the saphenous basically joins the femoral vein, and or the muscles of adductor longus and sartorius, they cross. So that will be the triangle which they are trying to make, and you draw up till there. Or if it is not visible on CT scans, not very easy to see, so the best is that look at it in a coronal view and stop at the lower limit of these gel tuberosities. Give a 2 centimeter margin all around all the vessels. If there are any lymphocytes, ensure that they are covered, and just that is what we are wanting to treat. So look at the inguinal over here in yellow. We'll go down and we cover everything. So we cover any lymphocytes, any vessels, everything would be covered. And this is a 2 centimeter margin. So this is of variable depth depending upon the how much is the body fat. And we need to ensure that adequate coverage has been given to these areas if we are wanting to treat them. The istiorectal fossa per se is not a target in rectal cancer, but it becomes important if the tumor has invaded beyond the levator ani or gone into the sphincter complex. In those cases, we need to include the istiorectal fossa. So this is primarily like we said, that any fat which was being seen beyond or lateral to the levator ani, which is this diaphragm thing which we were talking about. So anything lateral to that fat is the basically the istiorectal fossa. So the boundaries would be the obturator internus, the levator ani, and lower down the ischial tuberosity. It's easy to remember and easy to contour also. Posteriorly, what happens is that the gluteus maximus come into play. And what we need to is that the anterior border, we draw a ventral plane, and we don't go all the way down into the soft tissue plane because the fat per se is, there is no boundary between this. So conventional area is not to cross beyond the gluteus maximus when we are trying to draw the istiorectal fat pad. So this is what this is, just a ventral sort of a plane, and we don't go down over here. So now to the target. Now we have defined all our subsites. Now we come to the GTV. So we draw the GTV and how to give an expansion to that. So we will give around 1.5 centimeter radial margin, craniocaudal 2 to 2.5. That has to be ensured. Now this is very important, and it has to be correlated with also your colonoscopic or proctoscopic findings, so that we are not missing out any submucosal extent on our CT scan, which may not be visible to us. So it is better to give adequate margins and then give a sort of a expansion to go into this mesorectal volume that we will be creating after that. For any gross nodes, a 1 centimeter margin is given all around for boosting it as a GTV along with the GTV primary. So we have the GTV, we've given a 1 centimeter margin. And this particular margin that we have given, the same can be expanded and form the mesorectal sort of a envelope that we were wanting to create, and go all the way up, then start drawing your nodal areas, and thereafter we can sort of finish off. And the areas which are there as a gross disease, they need to be boosted later on. So for planning purposes, both prone and supine both are easy to do. Depends upon how the patient is comfortable. So if there is a colostomy bag, it will be very difficult for the patient to lie down prone. So supine is not a indication for treating these cases. Only thing which we have to ensure is a full bladder and an empty rectum. The are two things which are absolutely important, otherwise it will be difficult to treat them. And IV and oral contrast for proper opacification of the vessels and the small bowel, which will be our normal tissue, which we want to not to treat them. So for drawing, once we have done a proper simulation with proper alignment, with all the laser markings done, and then we need to fuse whatever is the available imaging with us, if available. So there will be an MRI needs to be fused with the CT scan. Take into account all the clinical findings which are there, and give sufficient margins to ensure that we don't miss out anything. There is motion with rectal passage of rectal gas or bladder filling. So take that into account as your ITV, and do a daily IGRT in order to get proper coverage and not to miss any of this target regions. So the usual prescription dose is around 45 to 50 gray to the pelvis. And if we want to boost any of the gross disease, we can go up to 54 gray also. So to summarize and to just remember it as a take-home message, if we just remembered, so for early diseases, basically mesorectum, presacral, and internal iliac. This is what we are wanting to treat for all cases. Now, I have marked in red because I will be referring to it as a different slide. So just remember that these three are mandatory. For any advanced cases which has invaded the anterior subside, external iliac and obturator needs to be included. So if the internal iliac lymph node becomes positive, then also external iliac, and then obturator is mandatory. If the obturator is positive, then external iliac is mandatory. So it's a very sequential step-up progression. So if the rectal, instead of anterior invasion, it has invaded inferiorly into the anal canal or the sphincter or the anterior organs, then inguinal comes into play and has to be included. For cancers which have nodal burden which is outside the mesorectal fascia, like we referred to the iliac group of lymph nodes also, then in those regions, then it is better to cover all these regions except the inguinal, and that particular node either needs to be boosted or needs to be dissected. Now that's a lot of a debate going on how to handle the lateral nodes, but that is topic for another seminar, I guess. So the new thing nowadays, what they were wanting to do was that, because for early disease, we all understand that it is only the mesorectal area which is at risk. So for very early cases, they are avoiding even treating the internal iliac. That is why I had put that in red. So they are just trying to treat only the mesorectal area, when they are calling it as a TMI, that is total mesorectal irradiation. And that's a new thing which is still in progress, not a standard of care as of now. But yes, this is what the future is looking forwards to. So I would like to really acknowledge my department members, as well as the Department of Radiology, and my dear friend Dr. Shagun from Department of Radiotherapy in SGPGI. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anurita. And I would like to invite Dr. Ritu again for the question answer session. Dr. Ritu.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, first of all, I would like to really compliment you for such a fantastic presentation, where you have given everything from the basics, starting from the embryology to such a detailed anatomy, and then coming to the radiological aspects also, then explaining, and that really made the target delineation description very easy for us. So Let me check what questions do we have for us today.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, the first question is, what is the superior most part of mesorectum?
Mesorectum, basically, we have the boundary is taken wherever you see the superior rectal vessels. So the inferior mesenteric, it bifurcates into superior rectal, and it is very easily visible. I mean, even on a non-contrast CT also, you might be able to see it. Is my slide still visible? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, your
Yeah.
slide is visible.
So this is just something which I sort of had on my computer. So I'll just show it to you. So over here, this is a non-contrast CT. Forget about whatever is marked. It's a radiology scan. So over here, just keep concentrating on this area, right? So this is what we need to see, and it is visible. So just see over here, we are going down, and this is where it bifurcates. See, very visible. So this is the inferior mesenteric bifurcating into the superior rectum. Now this is the area where we want to start delineating a mesorectum. Have I answered this question? I mean, any other issues?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Ma'am, then in high rectal cancers, what will be the superior most part of CTV?
Okay, so basically, if you look at the rectum, more or less it will end, if you're not talking of the rectosigmoid part. So if there is no rectosigmoid, then it will end somewhere at around S1, S2. It doesn't go beyond that. So whatever is your GTV, we have to ensure that.
यश तुम आज इधर उधर से नहीं पढ़ोगे, एसएम से पढ़ोगे बेटा, ठीक है?
Hello. Okay.
No, so continue. Yeah.
Right. So we have to ensure that we have at least beyond the GTV, whatever you have drawn, at least ensure 2.5 centimeters. Not, don't say that it is going beyond the superior rectal artery. It is allowed to do so. We need to target the disease. We are not targeting these subsites alone. So that's okay. So if it has to go up into the sigmoid, please go into the sigmoid.
Any robust evidence to suggest that 50 point is better than 45 gray in CA rectum?
Not really. Not really. So that will.
You are planning, madam?
Sorry?
45 gray or 50.4?
I practice 45, but there are people, but then I am practicing also on 2D. So I practice 40. It is IMRT, I'm sure 50.4 can very easily. And I would like to give 50.4. Why? Because the chances that I would get a sterilization of the node is not dissecting. I would really like to ensure that they are sterilized.
You have to go if enlarged node, suppose enlarged node in some internal area.
Right, that is it. So in those areas, it would be better to do it via SIB and go up till 54. So just the nodes, because that's a gross disease.
Okay.
So if the surgeon, that's why I said that the lateral nodes, they are a matter of debate, whether you want to treat with radiation only or you want to want your surgeon to dissect it out. So it has to be decided beforehand what is to be done.
Yeah, we practice in phase 1, phase 2. For phase 1, 45 and then 5.4 gray boost. And if lateral pelvic node is, then we may escalate as you told with SIB.
Yeah.
Ma'am, can we take next question, please?
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, what are the indications for CTRT in CA rectum?
Okay. Very early disease, basically, why we are giving, I mean, you're talking about neoadjuvant or it is radical?
Ma'am,
This
CTRT.
is actually neoadjuvant, ma'am.
Neoadjuvant.
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay. So neoadjuvant for RT alone, if there is no nodal involvement at all, I guess you would be okay with just RT alone, right? But that is for early disease, that is T1, T2, N0. Anytime we have gone beyond the the muscularis layer, then it is better to give chemoradiation rather than just radiation alone.
Yes, ma'am. But ma'am, there is some specific indications also that if it is in the upper part, then you can go for frontline surgery. Yeah.
So that particular thing, that school of thought is basically the tumors lying above the peritoneal reflection. You tend to treat them like colon cancers. Below the peritoneal reflection, you need to treat them like rectal cancers. So given that differentiation in that upper rectal, maybe if you go by that philosophy, then neoadjuvant has no role. So they go
Yes, ma'am.
upfront with surgery and then adjuvant, right? But if
Okay.
it is lower, then we first give neoadjuvant in advanced cases in order to achieve a R0 resection as far as the
Yes.
CRM is concerned. So this
Yes.
is the philosophy, depending upon how you want to sort of understand that part.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
I have a question. When there is a majorectomy, you are doing contouring and for upper part of the rectal cancers. So what should be your lower border as a CTV or and majorectomy?
No, I didn't get it. Your mesorectum lower border.
Even if you upper rectal or rectus sigmoid you are doing.
Okay, right. So yes, the issue is that people are talking that if it is upper rectal, because of the drainage patterns, why to treat the entire mesorectum, right? That's the
Okay.
debate that is there. But as far as the guidelines go, they have continued to include the entire mesorectum till the pelvic diaphragm. So we don't have data for just that. Maybe very early diseases we can get away with. But as the moment we encroach onto either the T3 diseases, then I guess it would be better to include the entire mesorectum and not cut corners at all. Because if it is an upper tumor, what we can also do is that delineate the sphincter complex separately, give it a constraint so that we are not sort of compromising on the functional status of the sphincter. And that ways entire quality of life can be maintained once the surgeon is preserving the sphincter also. For upper rectum, I'm sure we can put a constraint on that. For lower rectum, it might be difficult to exclude anything.
Ma'am, so do you wish to say that even in high rectal cancers, we should include the entire mesorectum?
What you are taking a lower part of the majorectum straight, that is funnel tube.
Lower part,
Can you show me the
lower
picture?
part is where is the level, wherever you see the levator ani inserting into the external anal sphincter, that's the lower part of your mesorectum. So wherever the section where you can't visualize the mesorectal fat, that forms the
Okay.
last part of your mesorectal that you are delineating. And to
No,
answer,
if you
yeah,
see the rectum and surrounded by the levator ani, that some part also fatty tissue is visible also. So when you stop actually.
yeah. So just hold on. I'm trying over here. If we can just go through this. Yeah, we can very well see the mesorectum fat, right? The green boundary.
Yeah.
Now, as we go down, now here the diaphragm is started to appear. Now this part of the levator ani that's coming up, and this is the levator ani here, right? And here the fat is now decreasing because it cones down, lower down. If we go all the way down, beyond this, it will be very difficult to delineate any mesorectum. So I will
So you
stop
stop
here.
here.
Yes, I will stop here.
Okay. So the thing is that okay, I have a MRI. I will do it nicely, but I have a CT.
Yes. See, on a CT scan, hold on, I'll show you on a CT scan also, if I can just give me a sec. I had the CT, but I didn't sort of play through it because it was taking too much time. Right here, go down. Now, this mesorectal fascia is also visible over here, right?
Yeah.
Go down. Down. The levator ani is very well visible now. And beyond this, I'm not drawing anything.
So
this is my last.
this is your lower part.
Yes, this is my last part.
Okay.
After this
So
is the sphincter complex.
Okay. So you are so any window setting is there. Actually, sometimes we are not able to visualize the mesorectum in CT. Any windowing?
Actually, I won't be able to help you with the exact one because this normally we do with our radiologists. So
Yeah.
so there's actually a thesis which is going on, and we have these good resolution ones coming. So if you don't have a good resolution CT, it's very difficult to see the mesorectum at all.
Okay. So superior rectal artery, what you shown that is a bifurcation of the inferior mesenteric artery.
Yeah.
So it sometimes we see it the L4 L5 level, L4 level also.
No, I mean, you might be seeing that if you're seeing the bifurcation, the first branch it gives out is the left colic branch. Don't confuse that. Go down, because that is also a lateral branch. You'll see a branch. So that will arise higher up at L4 level around, if you're seeing that. Go down, this normally is inside the pelvis. So it's below the promontory only. So
below the
you might
promontory.
you might be confusing it with the left colic branch of inferior mesentery.
Okay. So even if the rectosigmoid part, if you are treating, you are including the total major rectum down till levator ani insertion.
No, I said that is debatable. If it's an early disease, I will just give a margin of around 2.5 to 3 centimeters, right? Because if my entire burden of the disease tends to be in the upper rectum, then why do I need to treat the entire mesorectum? But going by the guidelines, they have as yet not said that do it, right? It is still an individualized approach. There are no set guidelines that in upper rectum you can do away with not treating the entire mesorectum. They still say that the entire mesorectum, because there's no fat plane between the craniocaudal extent of the mesorectum. So if it is T3 and above, now the chances that the microscopic disease would not extend below, that would be debatable. That is, what is the chances of risk that I'm trying to play with? So that is a risk outcome that we need to debate before we exclude this. As per the guidelines, can take care of the entire thing. But recent literature, like we said, with recent literature, they are saying that at 4 cm you are good to go. Don't need to treat the entire thing. From 2.5.
So another, sorry ma'am, another question is, if there is a lower part of the anorectum is involved with adenocarcinoma, so if how much beyond levator
so
ani
whatever
you
is your GTV, go beyond at least 2 to 2.5 centimeter, even if you're going into the anal canal. Doesn't matter.
Anal canal. So ischiorectal fossa also, if it give 2 centimeter margin, part of ischiorectal fossa is also come.
No, ischiorectal fossa, if it is invaded, if ischiorectal fossa is not invaded, if it is only trickling along the sphincter complex. So most of the times we see that sort of it goes between the external and the internal sphincter, goes down up till there. So in that case, your sphincter complex is the target, not ischiorectal fossa. If it will sort of invade outside the levator and beyond that and goes into the ischiorectal fossa, then also if it is a minimal invasion, you just delineate that and give around 1 to 1.5 centimeter margin and stop. No need to treat the entire ischiorectal fossa.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Nice presentation. I should appreciate it.
Ma'am, can I ask one question? What are the chances of sigmoiditis in cases of when we treat upper rectum?
Definitely there are there. Exactly the exact number I guess is around 10 to 15%, if I'm not wrong. But the exact figure, I'm sorry, I won't be able to give you. Like
okay,
that.
no, I just ma'am, I just want to ask that whether it is so frequent that because the young females it is more common, and so that is why in upper rectum we generally go for frontline surgery, and we should not go much for this thing, adjuvant radiotherapy.
Actually, the reason that why we want to avoid treating upper rectal with radiation, it's not because in females we have a high chance of sigmoiditis. It's primarily because your spread of disease, the disease pattern, it has an upward spread. So how it behaves like is more like colon cancer. That is the behavior of the disease, right? So that is why it is said that it is better to treat with surgery upfront. But if, for example, it is not possible to resect out, then anyways we will have to give neoadjuvant, and then only the surgeon is going to touch it.
I want to interrupt. I think Dr. Neeraj Rastogi want to make some comment. He just raised hand. Sir, Dr. Neeraj, he just posted raised hand. Okay, Dr. Ritu, you go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Ma'am, somebody has asked that in rectosigmoid cases, what will be the cranial most part of the CTV?
Rectosigmoid cases, like, okay, basically rectosigmoid per se, we are not treating with neoadjuvant for starters. Okay, so it is for rectum cancer. But if you are really pushed and you have to do it, and it is only a marginal encroachment into the sigmoid, then again we go back to the basic philosophy. Just draw your target, give a margin of 2.5 centimeters, see where it is leading you, because the sigmoid doesn't cross outside the pelvis, right? Most of the times it is within the pelvis, it's lying there, right? So if you are, as long as you are within the pelvis, it's okay. But if you are going outside the pelvis, then it's, you have chosen a poor case to treat.
Okay. Ma'am.
Dr. Ritu,
Okay.
I want to ask one question.
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Amrita, before CTRT, would you like to assess patient if a patient need colostomy or not?
Yes, of course, definitely. So we always ask whether the patient is able to pass feces and flatus comfortably or not. In case the patient is having any problems of obstipation, then first the patient goes for a diversion colostomy, we treat, and then sort of the colostomy closure can occur later on after the surgery. So definitely that's a very mandatory requirement. There's no point in starting and then, because there will be ensuing edema. So we will worsen the condition if we don't take care of it up prehand.
Yeah, yes. This is important point and our students should see this. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Can I make comment on this? Yeah,
Sure, sir.
yeah. I want to make a comment. Unless and until there is a back pressure changes proximal to the diseased part, we usually have managed with the regular laxative, and we not faced any obstruction during treatment. So because everything come at cost, and sometimes upfront diversion, the decision I want to make comment is upfront diversion decision is to be taken very cautiously, not to be taken in hurry. Only, yeah, it is a concentric disease and go ahead with the diversion.
I think more or less
Regular laxative will help, and mostly you will not land up in the complete
answer
obstruction.
is given by the patient himself.
Yeah.
If the patient is able to pass feces and flatus, he will be able to cope up with it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we need to take care.
Yes, Dr. Anurtha.
Yeah, it is better. Yeah, better to discuss imaging with the radiologist and whether they able to tell
Always,
how
always.
much the back pressure changes also.
Yeah. Without radiology, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Ma'am, ma'am, can I ask one question? There is one case like lower rectum cancer. It is it is encroaching up to the anus, this thing, lower anus margin. So and it is adenocarcinoma. So ma'am, how can we treat this patient? Like only with the radiotherapy or neoadjuvant radiotherapy followed by surgery?
So now the thing is big. This was basically an anorectum, right? So first of all, you have to discuss with the surgeon. Are they willing to operate an anorectum, and this will require normally an APR, right? So we are not doing anything. So if this your surgeon says no, I'm not operating, then it goes for radical treatment. Now, if it is resectable, when we say resectable, what are we wanting? We are wanting a good quality of life and a sphincter preservation. Now, if the sphincter preservation is not possible, now the entire point of surgery at this point in time becomes that you want to have a good local control. So these are the issues that you will have to discuss with the patient also, the surgeon, and yourself. So it is not that you can't treat with radiation, but your aim has to be very well defined as to what you want to do and why. So if you want that the surgeon is going for a surgery, because your dose prescriptions, your management is all going to change. So this is not that you can't do it. You can do it, but then know why you are doing it.
So, ma'am, if like then if it is a definitive RT that everything is decided, their surgery cannot be done. So, if it is a definitive RT, then what must be the dose?
Okay, so in that case, it becomes radical. So we give around 45 to 50 to the pelvis, depending upon your nodal burden. and we have to boost at around 5 to 7 gray to the gross disease. Now it is into the anal canal also. So we
Yes.
all know that 54 is not enough for anal canal. So your GTV, which needs to be boosted, at least you will have to go up with to at least 60 gray. Now either you do it with brachytherapy, that will work very well for such cases. Otherwise, with external beam, it is slightly difficult. You can give, but there's a lot of toxicity because lots of subcutaneous tissue toxicity also that will occur. So it's difficult to treat.
Okay, ma'am. So adenocarcinoma would be better responding or squamous cell because it is the adenocarcinoma, lower rectum. Lower
In a
rectum,
rectum,
yes.
of course, it is an adeno which responds much more better than a squamous.
Yes,
In
yes,
anal
ma'am.
canal,
Yes. Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ma'am,
yeah.
somebody is asking a question that do we give ITV margins in all the patients?
Yes, because if you're wanting to treat the mesorectum, everybody, even if you follow a bladder protocol, then also the bladder filling might change. So it will be subjective. So you have to give an ITV of at least 1 centimeter anteriorly. So if you go by the the studies, they have seen that it's 1 centimeter is sort of a compromise. They have documented that these changes, both craniocaudal and lateral and anterior posterior, they occur to an extent of almost about 1.8 to 2.2 centimeter. So definitely without that, it's very, very difficult. Unless and until, of course, if you're using IGRT, maybe you can get away with minimal of not go up till 1 centimeter and try to see that. But otherwise, definitely you have to. Otherwise, you miss the target.
Ma'am,
Okay.
one more question, ma'am. That you said that when we for lymph node contouring, you should go anterolaterally. You should go 2 centimeters, otherwise 7 millimeter
1.5.
margin.
I said 1.5.
1.5. Okay, okay. So it is from top to bottom, like where
No,
we want to
not from
treat the.
top to bottom for the external iliac, where along the psoas, when you reach almost till the mid pelvis and lower. At that point, the lymphatics are divided into 3 sets. So the anterolateral part, it extends variably, right, around 1 to 2 centimeters. So that is why the guidelines recommend that apart from the 7 millimeter margin which you are giving, it is better to add on 1 centimeter to that. So that is why around 17 millimeters you are extending anterolaterally, not medially. Please don't enter medially.
Yes, yes, anterolaterally, yes, ma'am. Okay.
Then
Dr.
the
Ritu,
next,
is any more question?
sir, there are a few more questions here.
Yeah, so
If
please
it all-
wind up quickly. I think it
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Sir, another question, ma'am. Adjuvant RT guidelines and prescription. Somebody is asking adjuvant RT guideline and prescription. Is there any guideline that we can follow for this? Maybe.
Not really. I have not come across that. More or less, what we adjuvant is basically, I think you will have to superimpose with your pre-treatment the scans, find out your tumor bed, and try to treat at least the mesorectum and the nodal areas if they were involved. But I am sorry, I won't be able to help you with a guideline per se.
Okay. Ma'am, in one of your slides, you mentioned about in-field recurrence. What can be the rationale for that?
Resistant disease, or the surgeon didn't dissect it out properly.
Okay, ma'am. What should be preferred treatment for high rectal cancer? Neoadjuvant CTRT gives this progression-free survival advantage. Whether they want to ask it or they're just saying that.
I think they've made a comment, and
Yeah.
it's like, so it's okay. I think we have discussed this part 3 times.
Yes, ma'am. Then is there a case of radical RT or CRT in early disease, CA rectum with complete response after this?
There is definitely for very early diseases. Once they have found a complete response, then they have even done away with the surgery part of it. So, but that is for very early diseases, the T1 set of cancers, if you find, and they have kept it on watchful waiting and keeping the surgery for salvage later on. So yes, that is there.
Okay. Ma'am, organ preservation in rectum?
Yes, yeah. So that is the same thing, no? If you are avoiding the surgery. So very early diseases, either you do a sort of, let's say a mucosal resection